Hi, good day to you, students. My name is Sophia Bryan, and I'm an attorney at law licensed to practice in the island of Jamaica. It is my absolute pleasure to have the opportunity to be your guest lecturer for today. So I have a few fun facts to share with you. First of all, I attended Meadowbrook High School and I was a head prefect in 2009. Another fun fact is that whilst I was in law school at Meadowbrook High School, I was taught by Miss Wallace. So this is just a wonderful full circle moment for me. And I'm happy to be able to share this information with you. This will be especially exciting for those of you who have an interest in pursuing law as a profession, and the very oxymoronic nature of the title of this lecture will give you a lot of things to think about, and for you to recognize that just because something is legal, it doesn't mean that it is just. And as a budding attorney or budding legal professional, you have to think critically, and there will be instances where you will have to challenge the system that exists. So let's get into the legal policies used by the Europeans to delay freedom in the post-emancipation era. So during the 1800s, there was a period of transition, right, for former slaves and plantation owners, as you would already know, and you would have gone through thoroughly as a CSEC student. And this was all new to everyone, and new especially to the former slave owners or plantation owners. You're going from a system where you had free labor, essentially. They had free labor, and it was incredibly, it seemed like it was a burden for them to now transition into a situation where they had to make some form of compensation, and they had to seek or outsource other forms of labor. And former slaves or ancestors, they were now being put in a position to experience the human rights and freedoms that they're entitled to as human beings. You know, the Europeans didn't need to give them that because these are rights that we're all born with as humans. So this is the background. So they wanted to make the process of moving from slave to human being as difficult as possible. And they wanted to find ways to continue to have the former slaves at their mercy. So some of these methods included control of land, control of movement, control of freedom of work, control of voting rights, and restrictions on healthcare. And I imagine that for those of you who are wearing your thinking caps, you are thinking that some of these methods of control are still in place, and the planter class is now being replaced or has been replaced by the government. But that's not the nature of this discussion right now. So as it relates to control of land, there was the Ejectment and Trespass Act of 1839, which prevented slaves from buying land. If it evicted freed people from their huts on estate land, and it allowed for higher rent charges of huts on estate land. And there was punishment for any person refusing to comply with the law, right? So if there are so many things were up against them, it would have made life increasingly difficult for them to make an easy transition. And some of you, depending on how involved you are in the affairs of how your household is run, And in future, you'll see that getting land or access to land, it's a very challenging and drawn out process, and not much has changed from the European or the British way of getting access to land in Jamaica even today. So there were anti-squatting policies. So this prevented ex-slaves from squatting on crown land. And squatting means to just take up residency without any formal title. And there was punishment and fines for squatting on crown land. And in some instances, planters sold lands to former slaves, and they didn't get a title. And so if there was no title to demonstrate ownership, then this resulted in the land going back to the planters. And in Jamaica, we see evidence of this, squatting culture and family land culture. And so one of the things that, I like that there is now a push for Jamaicans to actually register land. So I think that's a good move. But if a piece of land has been in your family for generations upon generations, I think that's evidence of ownership. But the title, the piece of paper that says you're the owner, that's what matters at the end of the day. So these were some of the policies, anti-squatting policies, that made the transition for the Africans, our ancestors, from making a smooth transition. There was restriction on voting rights. So there was a time, ladies, believe it or not, there was a time when only men were allowed to vote, and these men had to be freed. These men are British, or they had to also be Christian. And so we see where Christianity was being used as a tool for control. And this is why Rastafarianism is seen as such a rebellious type of religion. Even today, you had to be 21 years or older or white, and you had to be an owner of 10 or more acres of land. And I don't know how many of you understand what acreage is, but that is quite a lot of land. I believe an acre is 40,000 square foot of land. And even today, it costs quite a pretty penny to acquire an acre, even in rural Jamaica, where nobody really wants the land, So there were a lot of ways to control how many persons. Why did you have to be at 21 years or older to vote? Why did you have to be a part of a certain social class? And why was voting only restricted to a certain sex at the time? So these restrictions prohibited the freedom of ex-slaves to be able to have a vote or a voice concerning the policies and legislations that were passed in that era. And so if it didn't meet these requirements or any of these requirements, then you literally had no say. And it was as though you were still under bondage, because you didn't have an opportunity to really make a contribution to the policies and legislations that were governing the country that you were bound to. So there was a control of freedom of work. And we see that through the Vagrancy Act of 1866. Persons were forced to continue to do free work for 3 months of labor under an ex-slave master. If there was any breach of this act, vagrants that ran away would be made to work without compensations. So if the requirements to be to breach this act, they were the standard of proof wasn't very high. And so it was very easy for persons to get into trouble for vagrancy. And if persons can, former slaves could willy-nilly be accused of or charged with vagrancy or a breach of the Vagrancy Act, then that's going to limit what they can do to earn a living. And imagine being bound to 3 months under somebody that made your life hellish. There was control of movement, anti-immigration policies. A lot of those policies are still in place. Well, I wouldn't say, so we do have CSME, Caribbean Single Market and Economy, which allows for movement within the Caribbean once you're pursuing legitimate things like work or education study. However, there are numerous cases. We can think of the Shanique Mary case. There are several cases where, or instances where Jamaicans have been harassed at the borders of different Caribbean countries. And I think this kind of harassment and that kind of treatment has to do with, is a remnant of our colonial past. I'm sure there would have been instances where there was suspicion for immigration officers to act in the way that they did. However, it became a part of the culture, so to speak. Ex-slaves were restricted to harsh working conditions in their country. Planter class wanted to maintain their labor force through forcing them to stay. So it wasn't even a case where staying was incentivized, but if getting access to land was difficult, if you didn't have an opportunity to make a contribution to how your country was being run, then staying where you were, it would probably seem like the most viable option for a lot of them. So there was restriction on healthcare. So there was Anti-Slavery Abolition Act and an excerpt here that. So in addition to sanitary restraints, there was a refusal of healthcare for ex-slaves. And in many instances, the healthcare was substandard for persons who were considered of a lower class, and there was a neglect of the lower class or freedmen where healthcare was concerned. They had to figure it out on their own, essentially. Some other policies to consider or to take note of, rather. There was an inability to purchase land due to the high land prices, which I alluded to earlier, that this is still very much a situation that we contend with here in Jamaica. And these high land prices forced ex-slaves to live on estate land and abide by the planter class rules. Ex-slaves were forced at times to work 40 plus hours a week under the ex-planters for low wages. Ex-slaves were neglected their right to bear arms, i.e. carry weapons to protect themselves. And even today, getting a licensed firearm is a very difficult process. However, Jamaica is a complicated situation, due to the whole issue of crime and violence that the country continues to struggle with. So those policies may be warranted. And at the time of this recording, the Prime Minister of Jamaica is now in the media around talks related to amending gun laws. And ex-slaves were neglected the right to hold any civil office post. So this is where our conversation ends. I will be sharing the slides with you, and I will be sharing the resource list that will assist you with preparing for your exam. and I'm open to answering any questions that arise from this, any post conversation. I may be open to that. And I wish you all the best of luck in your upcoming exams. And I wish for you to have a happy holidays. Take care.